Recently, I saw these stats floating around again about Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford. Statistical mirrors these two are, and near identical success rates. Like, these stats are weird. I might even argue that Jared Goff winning 2 playoff games for the Lions is a greater feat than Matthew Stafford winning a Super Bowl with the Rams. I'd also argue both guys are still underrated. The only area Stafford is still far ahead of Goff is money earned. $328 million for Stafford so far to Goff's $161 million. You poor poverty quarterback. That noted, Goff will be the second highest paid quarterback on a per year basis right now, so he is catching up. Today, though, I wanted to dive into how insanely similar and productive Goff and Stafford have been after the Lions and Rams did a good old-fashioned QB swap. But at the time of the trade, Goff was looked at like a serf, while Stafford was still king. Not only that, I'll reveal the bad blood that was brewing between Jared Goff and head coach Sean McVay that contributed to his trade, information I wasn't really aware of until now, and how this might have been done a little bit differently if not for that. Today's episode is sponsored by Manscaped.com/goodsports, and this month Manscaped is making it as easy as possible for you on Father's Day. Don't know what to get your dear old dad? Well, let me recommend the Handyman. My dad is actually a handyman. He can fix anything, build anything, which is why I'm such a disappointment to him. But that all changes when I get him the best electric face shaver around. This little guy is compact, great for travel. I used it on my recent trip to Hawaii, and it's the only electric shaver that's ever worked well on my neck. It's got dual blades, which means 2 blades, your standard foil blade and a long hair leveler, and all dads appreciate a good leveler. It can knock down face hair that's overgrown up to 3 days of not shaving your beautiful face, and it's waterproof, so you can do it at the first row at SeaWorld if you want. And maybe it's time to gently nudge your dad towards shaving those unruly nose hairs. Throw in the Weed Whacker 2.0 for Father's Day, the best nose hair trimmer around, and he'll get the hint. So use my link below, manscaped.com/goodsports, to get 20% off plus free shipping to make sure your father doesn't take you out of his will after Father's Day this year. I'm getting back in, Dad. It's hard to imagine anyone having bad blood with lovable Sean McVay.
Love you, man. Let's go. Hey, look at me. Hey, love you.
And not just because his blood is being studied at UCLA for its pureness, ability to unite, and is also O negative, the most sought after blood in the world. But Goff and McVay apparently did not like each other at the end of their tenure together, and that surprised me because both guys appear to have very likable personalities.
I almost threw it to you right away.
Oh, hell no. Let's get you a rush right here then, babe.
Sure, McVay can be intense. All head coaches are.
Good attempt, no good. It's incomplete, and the Rams will win it.
Yeah.
But he's never come off as an asshole. And we already know that the Rams and McVay did Goff dirty and how they traded him to the Lions.
The Detroit Lions really wanted to get this done and resolved as soon as possible. And there were other teams involved in the process as well, but it quickly became apparent that the Los Angeles Rams wanted Matthew Stafford as badly as Matthew Stafford wanted them.
McVay and Stafford, of course, cheated on Goff and Cabo, and after 90 pina coladas arrived, that they could indeed work together. At the time, Goff had no idea, though, that he was even being considered as a movable piece.
It was a hard time. I wasn't aware that that was a possibility, or that's something that they were thinking about.
After all, the Rams gave him a 4-year, $134 million contract extension in 2019. Sean McVay has gone on the record, though, to say he regrets how he handled that situation.
I would never want anything to be misunderstood about my appreciation, my respect for Jared.
But recently, Michael Silver, whilst on the Jim Rome show, revealed that Goff and McVay pretty much hated one another in that final year in LA. And that was news to me.
They bonded so organically and emphatically early on when McVay took that job after Goff's rough rookie season and, went to great heights. He won that NFC Championship game, Goff in New Orleans. It turned sour in that really in that last season together in 2020, to the point where they weren't really talking much other than, just coach to quarterback. They were, Jared didn't feel as though Sean McVay was giving him specific adjustments. He just was mad all the time, and Sean McVay felt that Jared Goff was not executing his offense predictably.
But I do love some quarterback coach drama.
Wolford started that playoff game in Seattle, got hurt.
Wolford getting looked at in the locker room. Goff airs it out, underthrown, but the pass is caught.
Goff came off with a messed up thumb and no reps, came off the bench and won it.
Broken, dislocated right thumb.
And even after that, McVay wanted to start Wolford in Green Bay in the playoff game. Turned out he wasn't medically cleared, and Goff started that game too.
It's crazy to me, though, that McVay was so turned off by Goff. So scared his opponents would beat Goff in front of him.
But let's not beat ourselves.
That he was willing to rock with John Wolford in the playoffs. Now, Matthew Stafford gets a ton of well-deserved love for being tough as hell from this play.
Looking for somewhere to go. Sets and throws.
A few moments later.
I can throw the ball. Give me to throw the ball.
Is Stafford coming back in?
But Goff playing through and winning a playoff game with that fucked up thumb on his throwing hand doesn't get enough respect. Both Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff were, of course, first overall picks for their respective franchises. Stafford in 2009, Goff in 2016. Both of them were joining teams with long playoff droughts and took at least a year to hit their stride, although Stafford struggled with injuries until he got healthy and tossed a casual 40 touchdowns in 2011, which helped the Lions into the playoffs 3 seasons after they went 0-16. The difference between both Stafford and Goff was their perception. Stafford was seen as an elite talent who was being held back by his franchise, other than being able to throw to Calvin Johnson, while Goff was looked at as a product of Sean McVay's genius. Goff went further in the playoffs, making it to Super Bowl 53, while Stafford never won a single playoff game in Detroit. And yet, I don't think anyone would have told you at any point that Goff was a better or more talented quarterback than Matthew Stafford. The reason for that is arm talent, right? It's arm talent. Stafford has one of the most insane and nasty arms in the NFL. Goff, an average arm that mostly gets the job done, which is how I've been described as a lover on several occasions.
I didn't know it was a poor man's anything, but
he hears that. He's listening.
I heard about it. That's all.
Goff has always been portrayed as a side dish, never as the main course. Even after he bested Mahomes and the Chiefs in one of the greatest Monday Night Football games ever.
Jared Goff has proven the Rams' offense has some moves. The Rams are on pace to become the first team in NFL history to jump from the league's worst scoring offense in 2016 to the best scoring offense in 2017.
Goff's down season in 2019 probably convinced Sean McVay and general manager Les Snead that if they wanted to get back to the Super Bowl and actually win the damn thing, they were going to need to upgrade at quarterback, which would of course require a huge swing. Fortunately, the Rams were at a point where they still didn't give a fuck about the draft, so they sent their 2022 and 2023 first round picks plus a 2021 third rounder to the Lions. Oh yeah, and quarterback Jared Goff, his inclusion in the deal was basically seen as a partial salary dump and a placeholder while the Lions found their QB of the future, right? We all kept wondering which quarterback would the Lions target in the draft after the Goff trade. We all believed the team would use that extra draft capital to get a franchise QB. It was also a weird time for quarterbacks who had been to the Super Bowl. Goff, Garoppolo, and of course Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles all felt like products of their great environments and head coaching geniuses. This trade though kind of reminded me of when Denver sent Jay Cutler to the Bears for a similar return. It was mostly about the first round picks, but Denver also got back quarterback Kyle Orton as a stopgap option, and he played better in Denver on a bad team than he gets credit for. Statistically, at least, Orton was kind of the throw-in to the deal and ended up starting 33 games for the Broncos and actually had a QB rating 7 points higher than Cutler did in 2009 and 2010. But back to the point, the expectation was that Goff would serve as a bridge quarterback for the Lions.
Jared Goff is now going to be a member of the Lions.
We're thrilled to have this guy, so without further ado, Jared Goff.
And they would suck bad enough in 2021 to get their shot at drafting a franchise QB of the future. Maybe the best thing to happen to both Jared Goff and the Lions was that the year they were bad enough to get the second overall pick, it just so happened to be one of the worst quarterback classes of the 21st century. That was the 2022 draft, when we didn't even hear a quarterback's name called until Kenny Pickett went to the Steelers in the 20s, at 20. Also, with Dan Campbell and GM Brad Holmes at the helm, the Lions were no longer idiots. Instead, Detroit landed a cornerstone player on defense in Aiden Hutchinson, seen as the best overall talent at the time, even though the Jaguars spent their first overall pick on Trayvon Walker. That is still a head-scratcher, honestly, but it worked out in Detroit's favor. Finally got some luck there in Detroit because Hutchinson has recorded 21 sacks and 4 interceptions in his first 2 seasons in the league. Hutchinson was their pick that they had earned by being terrible for most of 2021, but the Rams gifted them 3 picks that eventually turned into 6 different players after a string of savvy trades. The final tally? Broderick Martin, Josh Paschal, Jameson Williams, Afito Melanfonwu, Jahmyr Gibbs, and of course Sam LaPorta. Out of all of those players, Martin is the only one who hasn't really made an impact, only active for 3 games his rookie season, but he does have time to develop. You can certainly argue Jameson Williams wasn't the right pick for the Lions, but he started to catch on in the playoffs last year with a pair of TDs in those 3 games, and he'll have a bigger role in the offense next season with Josh Reynolds now here in Denver. The jury's still out on Josh Paschal, but he started a playoff game for the Lions and should contribute in year 3. Melanfonwu played in all 17 games for the Lions last season, had 2 picks, including one that clinched the division. He had 3 sacks as well, then added 2 more sacks in the playoffs. He's starting to look like a big asset for Detroit at safety. Again, draft, develop. The development part, that's the key. And what do you really need to say about Sam LaPorta and Jahmyr Gibbs? They're fucking studs. Rarely does a team nail every pick they get in a blockbuster trade, but you don't have to. Hell, the Cowboys didn't hit on every pick in the Herschel Walker trade, but if you get it right on most or even half of them, you have a great foundation for the present and the future. And that's the situation the Lions find themselves in right now. What I love about this trade, besides its equality, and we all support equality here, is that the approach for the Lions and the Rams are polar opposites in terms of team building. They couldn't be any different, and it worked in both cases. Because of the Stafford trade, Detroit has risen from the ashes with a draft and develop approach. The Rams won a Lombardi with the fuck them picks approach. Something they were doing while they also had Goff on roster, signing and trading for veteran players like Brandon Cooks, Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters, and Ndamukong Suh, and Big Wit, who became a cornerstone for their success. All of the picks the Lions acquired were great, but the surprise is Goff was also great. He has not played like a throw-in or a bridge QB outside of that first season. He's played like someone who earned every penny of that 4-year, $212 million deal the Lions just gave him. In 48 starts for Detroit the last 3 years, Goff has thrown 78 touchdowns and 27 picks. He threw 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, in 3 playoff games last year while posting a quarterback rating over 103. He was not the reason Detroit wasn't playing in Super Bowl 58. I'm still trying to wrap my fucking brain about why that happened, but I know it involves Brandon Ayuk and an act of God. Now on the Rams side, the trade paid immediate dividends. They accomplished their mission in year 1. Matt Stafford was exactly what they hoped he would be from the get-go, and he pushed them over the top to beat the Bengals in Super Bowl 56. Fuck them picks proved to be a winning philosophy in the short term. Stafford came firing out of the gates, found instant chemistry with Cooper Kupp, and was nothing short of clutch in the playoffs after a regular season where he could have won MVP if not for a league-high 17 interceptions. But Stafford has always been a high-volume guy because he also casually tossed 41 touchdowns. And credit the Rams for adding Von Miller and OBJ during Stafford's Super Bowl season to get them across the finish line. Now, we all thought the bill was going to come due for the Rams And for a season, it did. But the biggest factor in LA winning just 5 games in 2022 was Stafford and his injury. That kept him out for half the year. They reloaded in the draft despite not having a first-round pick because they got an absolute stud in the 5th round by the name of Puka Nacua and drafted 2 difference makers on defense in Byron Young and Kobe Turner. Just try and forget that they spent a 4th rounder on Stetson Bennett. A mystery because we don't even know why he's not playing right now. What fuck them picks really means was fuck them first round picks because the Rams actually drafted 14 players in 2023 and all of them but Stetson Bennett appeared in at least 6 games. That all led to a playoff matchup in 2023 between the 2 sides of the Stafford trade. Lions fans cheered on Stafford when he won Super Bowl 56, but this time it was a little more hostile. And just like the trade in general, that game was about as close as it gets. Stafford had a gutsy performance like he had so many times in that building, and Goff was ultra efficient in his first playoff game as a Lion, hitting on 22 of 27 of his passes. The Lions got the playoff win they coveted while the Rams lost. And they, like the Lions, totally exceeded expectations in 2023. And that brings me to my main point. This was one of the rare win-win trades in the NFL. No one got fleeced. Russell Wilson. I will say, if the Rams and Lions knew how good Jared Goff would be in Detroit, there's no way the Rams give up so many draft picks in that trade. As fair as it was, the Rams had to believe they would be a lot better off with Matthew Stafford than with Jared Goff, which is true and not true in the same breath. A lot of weird things had to go right for this to be an equal trade. The Jets traded for Aaron Rodgers. Immediate return, garbage.
But there were really 2 options. It was retire and be his VP or keep playing.
Tom Brady and Peyton Manning worked, but they were free agents. The last player-for-player type trade that really worked for both teams was when Denver and Washington swapped running back Clinton Portis for corner champ Bailey. But if you look at that big picture, the Broncos really won that trade. The Rams got what they wanted in an immediate Super Bowl victory, and the Lions got their foundation to compete for the next few years and honestly just be relevant again for the first time since the Barry Sanders era, really. Credit both Dan Campbell, the only coach who wanted to be in Detroit, and Sean McVay for achieving that to the max after switching QBs. I think more than anyone, you have to also credit the Lions' GM Brad Holmes. He was the Rams' director of college scouting from 2013 to 2020. He really helped shape the Rams roster. He became the Lions' GM in 2021, pulled the trigger on an emotional but necessary trade, and parlayed his picks into one of the better rosters in the NFL. He also showed a lot of restraint, not immediately trying to replace Jared Goff with a rookie, and that's how we got to a championship appearance for Goff and a ring for Stafford. With identical wins at 24, completion percentages at 66, 41 turnovers apiece, 89 and 88 sacks taken, and Goff leading in passing touchdowns 78 to 75. The most fair trade ever.
One of the best text messages I got after the Super Bowl was from Jared Goff.
Thanks for watching That's Good Sports. Lions, Rams fans, please subscribe here. You know I'll be talking about your teams all season long with the winners and losers and all the stuff we do here. What do we do? Who am I? Where am I? God? Goodell? Roger Goodell?